To get a sense of how raw emotions can become on the issue of race and the police, listen to this exchange from Fox News this morning.
We have got, as a country, have to do some soul searching to figure out how we end what is bad relations between police departments and communities of color. This goes beyond just what's happening in the 2000s. Think about Rodney King. Think about Sean Bell, who was shot 42 times at his bachelor party by police departments. This is a real problem in this country that we have got to address, and it's not going to change overnight. Yeah. But we've got to understand that anger.
Total nonsense. The fact of the matter is Richard has no more information than anybody else, and he's completely jumped to a conclusion. Last night he and I debated this, and he said, why can't we rush to judgment? Why do we have to wait for justice? This is nonsense.
You are the problem in this country. When Hillary Clinton says
you are the problem, Richard, because
Hillary Clinton said there's a bag of deplorables, you are a deplorable.
Richard conveniently forgets that the President of the United States is black, the Attorney General is black.
Here we go.
The Democrat that runs that city is there. The police chief is black. He wants to forget that. The other thing that Richard wants to forget.
Richard, be quiet. Let Kevin finish.
You know what? It has nothing to do with color for me, because you know what? There are white people who've been killed. There are Asian people who were killed. Richard can't name one of them because he's an ethnocentric racist who only focuses on black issues, and he doesn't care about the real statistics of it.
I'm a racist.
He's just going to.
Wow. To discuss this issue further, we turn to a former policeman who is now a criminal defense lawyer here in Washington, Ted Williams. And from Miami, former prosecutor and now private attorney Katie Fang. First to you, Ted, as an African-American man, a former police officer, now someone who defends people accused by the police, what is your reaction to that exchange?
Well, I got to tell you, I was shocked by this reaction. You had two black men trying to get their viewpoint out, but the manner in which they did it, they got personal with each other. Look, Fox News is not the Jerry Springer show. We come on this show as guests to educate the public, and we don't come on to get into a personal food fight. And Britt, that's what we saw here, was an embarrassing personal food fight.
But what about the two sides? Do you have a view there as to who had the better argument?
I don't think that either. I thought that they both made quality arguments, but they both looked at race through their own upbringing and their own growth. But in looking at it that way, they seem to be diametrically opposed, and it seems as though what we saw here were two black guys going at it, hating each other. One seemed to be conservative and the other one liberal.
Right. Katie, let me turn to you for a moment, if I can. Would it be wise, in your judgment, for the police department in Charlotte to go ahead and release that video that they apparently have shown to the family but are not releasing publicly?
Absolutely. Public policy would lean towards releasing that video, if anything, to quell the violence that's happening in Charlotte right now. It would serve the purpose of the public interest to be able to see whether or not Mr. Scott was armed at the time of the confrontation with the police. And frankly, Britt, whether or not it was a confrontation in the first place. We don't have any of the evidence out so far. It is very early on in terms of the investigation. We do know there's also a state investigation going on, the DOJ and the FBI. I mean, it is going to be looked into extensively, but that video cam, the dashboard cam, would really go very far. I think being able to tell people, hey, calm down a little bit and see what the video shows.
Ted, the police department is suggesting at least that the video is inconclusive. What is your take on whether it ought to be released?
Well, I think it certainly should be released, but let's just be candid here. Even if you released it and you showed this guy with a gun in his hand, there's still going to be individuals out there who are going to say that the police in some form, shape, or fashion put it in his hands. But just for the purpose of transparency, that video, I agree with Katie, should be released.
Katie, your further thoughts?
Well, I think I need to go a little bit further than Ted, though. The family of Mr. Scott said there's no gun. They said he was holding a book and there was never a gun. But the police chief says, maybe he doesn't definitively show that he was pointing the gun at the police, but they say that there is a gun and a gun has been recovered. That, in my opinion, is hard evidence that the man was armed at the time, and that goes very far, in my opinion, in supporting the official story.
If it, in fact, shows that. Ted and Katie, it's not just in Charlotte. A deadly shooting by police of a black man in Tulsa has also sparked this nationwide conversation. And just a short time ago, that Tulsa police officer was just charged with first-degree manslaughter. Earlier today, Attorney General Loretta Lynch weighed in on the police shootings and riots at a news conference here in Washington.
For the second day in a row, protests in response to Mr. Scott's death took place in Charlotte last night. And for the second day in a row, those protests were marred by violence, this time leaving one person on life support and several individuals injured. An awful reminder that violence often only begets violence.
Ted, in your judgment, is that statement strong enough?
Well, I think it was as strong as perhaps she could put it out there at the time. Perhaps she could have put a stronger statement out. But I do agree with the Attorney General. I think that she had and should have come out, and perhaps maybe she should have come out sooner, and it may have helped to quell some of the violence.
Katie?
No way. She's the top cop of the United States. She should condemn the violence that's going on in Charlotte right now. She should say that rioting and looting does not accomplish anything, and she should urge people to stay calm and peaceful. I would tell everybody, Britt and Ted, read the entirety of what she said. It did not do anything or did not go far enough, I think, for somebody like her.
Well, but the question is, what do you want her to do? Go down there and get between all these demonstrators and be there as the law and order person? No, Katie, it doesn't work that way with the Attorney General. She represents the United States of America. She did, in fact, put out a statement, and it is what it is.
Katie, last word.
I think it's a neutered statement. I think that she could go really far. As an African-American woman who's the Attorney General of the United States, she could go farther and say, stop rioting, stop looting, but she doesn't say it. She calls for crowd mediation. What is crowd mediation? I don't even know what that is.
Okay, Katie. Okay, Ted. Thanks both of you very much.